Welcome to Psychology of Daf. We're on Gemara Rosh Hashanah Daf Chaf, and today we're going to talk about certain experiences that must be face to face. The Gemara in about Aleph says, it asks, if you say that Adar immediately preceding Nisan is always 29 days, why should you desecrate the Shabbos for witnesses to travel to testify about seeing the new moon, as the court can calculate the time of the new moon without witnesses? The Gemara answers because it's a mitzvah to sanctify the new moon on the basis of the testimony of witnesses who actually saw the new moon, and not rely on calculations or established practices. In Hebrew, mitzvah lakadesh al hariyah. Now, this idea that some things must be experienced visually could be understood more broadly. The point is that certain processes of the mind and spirit cannot be attained or properly achieved without visual physical experience. You can love God or your spouse or your children as much as you want in your heart, but you also need actual face-to-face time. In the Kiddush Levana liturgy, we know that greeting the new moon is somehow symbolic of greeting the Shekhinah. However, greeting the Shekhinah itself is symbolic of the loving relationship between husband and wife. Every couple goes through challenges in balancing all the responsibilities and the need for personal time. Often the greatest casualty of this process is intimacy, ranging from physical intimacy to simply spending time talking to each other. Time disappears. Everyone is exhausted. The bedroom starts to look like a nursery with diapers, toys, and other children's paraphernalia. Some couples never really recover from this hurricane of parental demands and responsibilities. If you add the economic realities of working mothers to the mix, is there any time left at all? When most people hear the phrase kovea itim, they think of the daily moral obligation upon every Jewish male to set aside time to study Torah. Let's take a look for a moment and think about a different type of kvias itim. If one interviewed most from couples and asked them to list their priorities of the day in their lives, you would hear responses such as raising good children, earning a living, acquiring knowledge of Torah, and performing acts of chesed. And these are all important and worthy activities, of course. Yet it is rare for a couple to consider another crucial activity, spending time together alone. Few can live their lives solely in service of others. Most people who ignore their emotional needs become irritable, bitter, or quietly resentful. Over the long haul, couples are not able to function effectively as parents, breadwinners, or even Klei Kodesh unless they spend time focused on emotionally meaningful activities that nurture their relationship. Even if one spouse of the couple is that rare tzaddik or tzaddikis that can forego this need, the other usually is not. This leads to an imbalance where one spouse feels constantly deprived but also feels guilty because the other spouse is too holy to care about so-called mundane emotional needs. Many couples today are not given the social sanction and encouragement to develop a relationship with their spouses. Who is out there telling couples that it's a priority and a moral obligation to tend to your spouse and your relationship? It's just assumed you get married and live happily ever after. But in fact, that rarely happens without much effort and commitment and spending time growing together. People are busy and stressed. They carve out time to daven and a minyan and study Torah because the values of the community are strongly in favor of these activities, and so they make the necessary sacrifices to fulfill these moral obligations. But couples are not told that maintaining their relationship is also a priority and cannot be neglected. Perhaps couples avoid spending time alone because it feels indulgent or selfish. Should they really be spending scarce funds or scarcer time to treat their spouses to a special evening? The answer is yes. It's not indulgent or selfish. It is a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, those who believe that this mitzvah of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha refers to doing chesed for others, not our spouses. And indeed, we often do treat strangers in a whole lot better way than we treat our own family members. In fact, however, the halacha points out that the opposite is true. In regard to the mitzvah of tzedakah, the more closely related the person, the greater the mitzvah and the greater the obligation, as we see in Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, Reish Nun Aleph Sif Gimel. So, there are no more excuses. Are you kovea itim?